I don't think anyone that's seen my defending would argue that I haven't got any bottle. But there is such a thing as too much bottle. Panel, can you guess how many plastic bottles are sold in the UK every day? No silly guesses.
Lots.
Afra? Quick.
Every day, 2 million.
2 million.
More than Michelle thinks.
OK.
5 million.
5 million. The answer is 35 million a day, just in the UK. And how many times do we use most of them? Once.
Wow.
OK? Between 8 and 12 million tonnes of plastic ends up in the oceans every year. In fact, by 2050, the rubbish in the sea is likely to weigh more than all the fish. Pictures like this honestly make me feel sick. And that's why I think it's time we have a bottle deposit scheme here in the UK. And it's not difficult. In Norway, you pay 10p deposit on small bottles and 25p on big ones, which you get back when you return the bottles. And guess what? 96% are now recycled. Now, I'm usually optimistic about the future. I very much see that my glass is half full. But if we don't change the way we live, I don't think we've got any reason to be optimistic. In fact, quite the opposite.
Now, we all want to do the right thing. No one wants to have a beach like that. And you know, personally, I'm a good person where recycling is concerned. I have to be. My husband is a recycling Nazi. I have to wash everything in fairy platinum. So every piece of rubbish I put out is shining. So it's not going to happen in my family. It's not going to happen in most responsible families either. But I think a lot of people now are a little bit recycled out in the sense that, you know, we can be fined. We can be criminalised if we put rubbish in the wrong bin. I've got 4 bins outside my house. I've got a little 4 and then a little brown thing. If I make a mistake, that's going to cost me 100 quid. If I don't pay that, that's going to cost me 1,000 quid. And I think people get very upset. People who are doing the right thing, we get very upset at the idea that we're going to be fined and criminalised. And I think this bottle thing you're talking about, it sounds like a great idea. And I know it would be working in Norway. Scandinavian countries have been recycling fantastically well for 30 years.
Why?
However, well, because they're a different culture to us.
Okay.
This bottle thing isn't going to work here. One, because the levy on some of the bottles is going to be 10 pence. On some it's going to be 50 pence. Now, that's just one more job for all of us to do. People don't have time. Now, I'm old enough to remember when 30, 40 years ago, when we used to take bottles back, adults never took them back then, for the simple reason they were too busy.
It doesn't matter who takes them back. It doesn't matter who takes them back. It's the fact that you're changing something, you're changing the mindset that these bottles are valuable, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money, 10p, 25p.
It's a lot
you
of
get
money
that money
for some
back.
people.
Not if you get it back. It's a reward for doing the right thing.
But it's a job. It's a job.
When I heard that Graeme was going to be debating this topic, I thought, who's going to disagree with that? I mean, what's not to like? It protects the environment. It protects health. The oceans are in crisis. Carol, you know, you managed to come up with... I mean, I know you said you recycle.
Not from this country,
so
I would suspect.
I just don't think that's a good enough reason. That Scandinavian countries have a different culture. They can manage it. We can't. It's a pathetic excuse. We don't have a choice.
We can't.
We don't have a choice. We have to get with it. You know, I think that... The problem we have in this country is just that we have a wasteful attitude. You know, it's not part of our culture. It's not an intrinsic tradition. It's just something that's evolved. You know, some of those images we saw in the developing world where they're getting a lot of the bulk of the problems from our environmental waste, they don't waste stuff because they can't afford to. You know, every bottle gets reused. Someone uses it for homemade drinks or medicine or storage because it's precious, whereas we just have this incredibly wasteful attitude. And I think it just has to change.
Can I just remind you, we've got a video here which, if you're squeamish, don't watch it. But this is what is at stake and the impact we're having.
These are fulmars that have been found dead on the beach. The post-mortem on the stomach isn't for the squeamish.
There's quite a bit of stuff in here. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll see. So you can see there's a lot of plastic in here.
Goodness me. It is just full of plastic.
Yeah, so this gizzard is basically full of plastic.
And this is happening all over the world. That's happening on our doorstep with our own wildlife. And I just think we have to, as sickening as some people may find those images, I think it's important we show the reality and make the connection between our lifestyles and the impact we have on our environment that's getting ever more, sort of becoming more toxic.
But how do you make it work? I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, long before the masses of plastic bottles, you get Sutton's back, as it was then, on a... We used to go around the back of the off-licence and nick the bottles and then take them around the front and get our Sutton's back, which is quite a good way of seeing you through your childhood. But, I mean, I'm impressed by what's happened on plastic bags and how just charging for plastic bags has made a big difference. But, I mean, this is a logistics problem, isn't it? You look at the number of bottles that are used today, where do they go, who takes them, who gives you the money, and the rest of it. I'm sure it can be done. I remember going to Oregon, the first time I ever went to Oregon in my 20s. I was, Oregon, quite a conservative American state, but everybody talked about their bottle laws. Everybody talked. It was a major thing in the supermarkets, great big things where you could put your bottles back and the rest of it. And I don't agree with you that the Scandinavians are a different culture. I think they've just had it for much longer. And I think if you introduced it... I mean, now we've got recycling, which you didn't have 15 years ago, did you? We all fill up the bins.
Michelle?
Well, watching that footage upsets me because I do think that, who do we think we are to endanger the rest of the planet just because we choose to be quite wasteful in our ways? So I think that's, upsetting footage. But for me, it's just like, why can't we just put recycling bins on the street? So if I go to the store, so I think two things to try and change this. Number one, if people continue to use plastic, which, by the way, why can't we just use different packaging?
Exactly.
That's my first point. So just change the packaging, point one. If we don't change the packaging, why can't you just have recyclable bins on the street and you just put it in there?
But there are recycling bins. I mean, in some places there are.
So then why
recycling
do we
bins
need this then?
No, but I feel like I say this a lot, but I'm all about incentives rather than sanctions, So I agree with what you're saying. I think it is draconian for people to get fined for putting their recycling in the wrong bin. I mean, we all make mistakes, and I don't think that's helpful because it makes it seem like a kind of onerous thing. But if you incentivise people by giving the money back if they bring back bottles,
reward and not punishment. But to your point about the packaging, we have to, as consumers, we have to make that change. An example of it is a document, an internal document that Coca-Cola had that we're going to show on the screen now. The first slide is basically their internal document. If you look at the right-hand corner where it says fight back, and then we're going to zoom in on that.
I like a good chart.
And it basically, it says that, we're going to fight back on those two things. That's, increased collection, they're going to fight back, and recycling targets, they're going to push back on that. This is this internal document. And then an EU scheme for deposit systems. OK, so once that got leaked, they then released a statement saying, and this will come up now, saying our sustainable packaging review is ongoing, but it's already clear from our conversations with experts that the time is right to trial new interventions such as a well-designed deposit return scheme for drinks containers, starting in Scotland, where conversations are underway. So by that being leaked and it getting into the public domain has changed their processes, both internal and external. And I think that's got to be a good thing, because absolutely right, we look at a bottle and we don't see it as a valuable commodity. Afua said the same thing, that, we're able to not bother about recycling and reusing things.
This government are not actually behind this, because they've already said they're unlikely to include this in their litter schemes, which is part of the thing. But can I just go to what I was saying before? I've got a little thing here, and this is what they give out to you. Okay, this is why people get hacked off. We're all trying really hard to do the right thing. I don't understand that. I try to understand this, and I read it every single week, and I get it wrong, because next month will be another one, and that'll have changed. And I think people, when did it become our responsibility to recycle? Don't we pay massive amounts, or I'm talking about individuals, when we pay massive amounts of council tax to councils to deal with this? And they're not...
But we're all in it together, aren't we? We all have to make a difference.
We sort of are,
we all have to make a difference.
Are they doing it? Do we know when it gets recycled it all goes to the right place? Or do we hear stories that it all been dumped together?
We have to trust that if it's being recycled, that it gets recycled.
Well, plenty of stories where it's not.
I think what we need is a bit more transparency to enable us to be a bit more conscious as consumers, because until the Sky campaign, I'd never even considered the concept of single-use plastic. Yeah, I'd never even considered that. But on the most basic level, I don't fully understand how this plastic ends up in the oceans. I don't really get the link.
That's something we can explore more another
week. Is that for another week?
It's not going to go away. Unfortunately, the plastic in the ocean is not going anywhere yet.